Hi, everyone. Here we're going to be talking about the web, its history, evolution, and issues.
We will focus on the early web and the transition from the early web to Web 2.0. We're mostly focused on design issues, but also aspects of functionalities. We'll talk about social media and social networking sites, the social media dilemma, internet and the environment, and social media in organizations. So here we have an image of the first website ever, and it's the World Wide Web website from the early 1990s. And here there's actually also a definition of the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web is a wide area hypermedia information retrieval initiative aiming to give universal access to a large universe of documents. And I think looking back at it now, I think the World Wide Web succeeded in achieving this, and actually succeeded in achieving this not in its first iteration, but it's in its second iteration, the 2.0 iteration, and its current format. And as we can notice here, wide area means that it's not just for computers within a specific building or organization. It's across the entire internet, across cities, countries, and the planet. Hypermedia, I don't think the World Wide Web was hypermedia back then, but they called it hypermedia because it supports text, as we can see here. This is the first web page. It supports the hyperlinks, as they were called, all these blue underlined words here, which are links to other pages. So it looks just like a word, but there is some piece of code behind it that we cannot see, but it's within the structure of the web page itself, as we have worked on in this course. And images, like pictures. So you supported text, hyperlinks, and images, and they call this hypermedia, but it really is now hypermedia nowadays, supporting pop-ups with spinning images and videos that start playing as soon as you log on. Of course, it is still an information retrieval platform or protocol. It's aiming to give universal access to large universe of documents. I think the universal access is almost there, not entirely, because of course countries can restrict and filter content that individuals in their societies can access via the internet. So you must have heard, the Great Wall of China, the Great Firewall of China. Firewall is the name for devices that restrict certain IP addresses, certain web pages, certain connections in the internet. And of course, China's not the only one, but I think it's the main one that actually censors so much content on the internet. But the World Wide Web still gives this kind of universal access, this kind of open access with the browser, this deceptively simple application that lets you put in any address of any web page. The big stores like Amazon, or the little shops in Atlanta, Georgia, that produce those cool shoes you like, or just a blog of people you randomly found on the internet, and so on. It's all there, accessible via the web browser and the World Wide Web system in the internet. So let's take a step back to those early days and take a look at some of the graphic features, the design, the aesthetics of the first websites, which are also a little bit related to functionality, but I think mostly in design too. And part of the story here will be how the initial or first functionalities of the web, as we kind of just saw, kind of remain consistent and really just fulfilled their promise now, but were always there in the beginning. So here's what the New York Times webpage actually looked like in 1994. It's really just the articles were listed in a selection box, almost like a drop-down box, and you select the articles you want to read with some other icons and some other links around here. And this is access via AOL I think American online company. So one of the early pages of Amazon, I think this is 1994. And you can see the webpage looks very simple. This is the actual webpage of Amazon during that time, Earth's biggest bookstore. Very, very simplistic, mostly text with some links here and probably some functionalities to search products. Of course, they began just focused on books in the beginning, Amazon that is. Here's a website for one of the first search engines, Lycos, 1996. So the idea is the web began in 1990. It kind of became much more popular in 1992. As we saw, 1994, the New York Times, various people were on the internet. So there was a need to search, to be able to search the web content, because there's thousands and thousands of pages available to be accessed via the web browser. So search engines were developed, and this is one of them. Lycos, and you would put some kind of keyword here, and you would search for all those relevant materials. There were a lot of these early search engines were organized in different ways, some kind of like sometimes in a topical, kind of hierarchical way. Such as an example of this is Yahoo. I don't remember now how Lycos operated, but we'll talk about how most search engines function today. And this is the beginning of it with Google. So this is actually a demo of the Google search engine. This is what it looked like early on. So they just kind of put a picture here. Look at this, how clumsy it looks now. And this very clunky looking forms where you could search Stanford web pages here and then search the web. Google the people there, they were from Stanford, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, who really developed Google. As we move on, things do start getting more perhaps interactive. The visuals become more prominent. Here's one of the first major web browsers, Netscape. And you can see all the functionalities with these big icons that nowadays we find kind of useless to be listed this way, to be shown and graphed this way. So these are still available, but there is just a much smaller button, or they are extra options that you would right click and see the options in the background. All these options are kind of still here. Or some of them at least, but it's the look is much more simplified. Here's the example of the New York Times webpage. And then Google also 1998 got a little bit souped up, ready for production, for mass consumption, for mass use, but also still beta. Beta usually means that it's kind of in progress. It's computer science lingo for is still in progress stage. It's not ready for total deployment, but you can still often be deployed as well for testing. And this is the interface of Google. Now you can see much more simplistic, much clearer with the colors. Another component of the development of the web is the wiki. And the wiki, I keep writing, but it's written all over here. Wiki means, is a Hawaiian word, means fast. And we'll talk a little bit about it, who developed it. And this is, I think this is actually the website of the first wiki. And it tells what it is. A wiki web is a site where everyone can collaborate on the content. The most well-known and widely used wiki is the Portland Pattern Repository. Who knew? Now, of course, nowadays, the most well-known and widely used wiki is, you guessed it, Wikipedia. And interesting to kind of pay attention to the notion that as the web evolves, some of those early features are just kind of being highlighted and kind of discovered. As Tim Berners-Lee himself has commented before, the web was always enabled this kind of editing of content by anyone who actually accessed the website. So let's talk a little bit about wiki a little bit more, and just to get the definition clear. So in the wiki way, quick collaboration on the web, Ward Cunningham and Bo Loof, which I think were the ones who developed the concept of wiki and put a little bit of the technological infrastructure to implement it. And they write that a wiki invites all users, not just experts, to edit any page or to create new pages within the wiki website using only a standard quote unquote plain vanilla web browser without any extra add-ons. So the idea is that you go to the website, you access the website, and the website is not just for viewing, it's also for editing. Most of the websites you access, you cannot actually edit the website itself. You cannot go to Amazon and just change the page around. But in the wiki, you can. And of course, that's how Wikipedia works, and also other wikis. As they wrote then, a wiki promotes meaningful topic associations between different pages by making page link creation intuitively easy and showing whether an intended target page exists or not. So this enables people to create page links, which of course were part of the early characteristics of the web, or the definitional characteristics of the web, for this kind of associating topics, associating pages that are related. And the wiki framework allowed people with the browser to actually change the website itself. A wiki is not a carefully crafted site created by experts and professional writers and designed for casual visitors. Instead, it seeks to involve the typical visitor user in an ongoing process of creation and collaboration that constantly changes the website landscape. So it's like if you set up your own website for your own shoe store, you're trying to sell shoes on the web, and you're putting your pictures in a certain way, and then you're putting your writing a certain way. And then if you put it in a wiki, somebody can go there and say, no, I don't want the pictures here. I want the pictures on top here, and I want the text on the right instead of on the left, and so on. Now, of course, with something like your own business website, you're not going to let everybody just go on and change the configuration, but it certainly makes sense in many contexts. So as we know, Wikipedia is the big wiki nowadays. It's very successful. It works. It's quite a wonderful resource, I think, that we all have. And I think people, I'm not really sure if people recognize it or not, but it's relatively reliable. It's as reliable as, the Britannica and those older encyclopedias, meaning it also has errors just like those as well. But it works pretty much just as well, if not better. There are many wikis too. Wiki Travel, Wiktionary. And this is a wiki for people that travel and going on travels and traveling and going to other places, and you can go there and edit the content. There's WikiHow. You might be familiar with this website on how to do this, how to pop a pimple, how to build a shelf on your bathroom, and so on. And you can literally go, there's a button where you go to edit the page, and you can edit the page. For example, get rid of dry skin on your face. So that was a page I found. And you can go you can see how to get rid of dry skin on your face. And anybody, I could just go press the edit button, and then it shows me the HTML. A little bit, it's not kind of HTML, it's a little bit some extra markups here, but I can just go on it and change the content. Okay, to see some is this HTML? Yeah, kind of. And I can just go and change the content, and then it's there public for everybody to see. And that's actually how Wikipedia works. I'm not sure if you have tried, but I do welcome you to try to find something you know about or you're interested in, and to promote suggestions. Now, if it's something controversial, there might be people, actually there probably is somebody there controversial or not checking, because there are communities that track wiki content, and you may not get away with just going and changing things that don't make sense or are not appropriate. So there is restriction, there are issues with wikis, but they certainly enable wide collaboration by people that are not near each other in a kind of live document that can be easily modified. And of course, within organizations also, let's note that within organizations, wikis can be very useful because it's not entirely open to the public, but everybody within an organization can then change the content, improve the document. And I think that was part of also the rationale for the web that Tim Berners-Lee developed, as we read about. So going along in our timeline and history of the web, here's an example of one, if not the first blog, personal log on the internet. So most experts agree that the first blog was links.net, created in 1994 by then student Justin Hall, who is famous for being the guy who first created the blog as a place to publish his writing. And I'm pretty sure this is a screenshot of that. I have the link of where I got this from. And so 1994, so the blog was already there very early on. People early on recognized that they can just easily upload a web page to a server so people can access. Now, it doesn't mean that this is not a wiki. People are not going to be able to just come here and edit somebody's blog, somebody's writing, but it is what we're going to call, what's going to be called later, user generated content. So it's part of that and part of the culmination of the web 2.0 as we know it now. And just other examples here, the blog, Live Journal, one of the early blogs, this interesting kind of site here, the history of blogging. You can check it out more later. A blogger came around too early on in the 90s. I'm not really remembering exactly, but here's an image in 1999, but I'm not sure if that's when they first began. But so kind of going to the 2000s now, these are web tools are really taking off and becoming standard part of the web. Interesting example, the Drudge report, and it's because it's one of these kind of long-lasting web pages from the early web iteration. So the Drudge report originated in 1995 as a weekly subscriber-based email dispatch. It was the first news source to break the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal to the public after Newsweek decided to kill the story. So it's an interesting example in the sense too that this sort of not entirely user-generated content, but kind of open media or free media. Now we call it part of social media, where individuals have the power to upload the information, and they have the power to provide a story that a traditional news source may have wanted to quote unquote kill or hide from the public. Nowadays, it's very hard to do that. You can hide a story from your own web page, and that will have an impact, because if you're Newsweek and the New York Times and everybody hides it, then it's going to be hard to find, but people are going to find it elsewhere, on the Drudge report, on Facebook, on Twitter, and so on. It's kind of funny too, the Drudge report page. I got this recently, maybe just last year or this year, or this year, 2021. It looks kind of identical to what it looked like in 1996. It's very simplistic. I don't find it very good, to be honest. It's not very easy to read, but somehow they decided to keep it this way. And we also begin seeing in the 1990s these social networking tools, which seem to be a kind of a natural development to with the web. Now, this is a little bit different than the web, because this example I have here, this is MSN Messenger and the ICQ chatting application. These are what we call stand-alone apps. So they are not connected via the web. They are an application you download, but it became part of these tools for interaction among individuals connected to the internet, and led the way to the development of social media and social networking sites. Next, we'll be talking about Web 2.0 and what the web has transformed into. See you there.